Hello Ferret fans, today we're back and we're here at Bhasvic in Brighton, and the agenda tonight is homelessness. Now we have a massive homeless problem in Brighton, as no doubt you do where you live. This is an ongoing process, the cycle is getting bigger and bigger, younger and younger people are dropping through the net. We know this from our experiences here in Brighton and Hove. We've got over 1,000 homeless people here. Indeed, our very good friend White Rabbit died earlier this year, God rest him. But ultimately, we've got people on the panel here tonight, including Mo, or Maria Garrett Gotch. We've got an imam coming from the Muslim community, a police officer, and a councillor who's Andrew Wills, who's Conservative councillor for this area. So we shall be putting questions to him, as will the audience, and we shall bring you the news as it comes. So don't despair, people out there. We're on the case, we're here filming it, and we demand justice, because there are 1,000 people out there tonight. It's freezing cold out there, and no doubt it is where you are. So what is wrong with this place? It's one of the richest towns in the world, and we've got 1,000 homeless people. Get on it, people, and please, please, please remember that you're only 3 paychecks away from it yourself.
We've got the next member of the Young Greens, Gina, on my right. Next to me is Maria Garrett, who's a homelessness and community activist. On my left is Police Sergeant Redbourne, who's also the Safe and City liaison of Sussex Police. And we've also got ex-veteran and member of Veterans for Peace and White Lions, just in between them. Can I have a round of applause for our panelists, so just a little introduction to what's happening today. As some of you may know already, we are Prequel. We are Stand for Preventing Inequality. We're a youth-led activist group in Brighton and Hove, and we're organising this event to help come to some solutions and share some opinions about the problems that I know a lot of people in the audience feel very strongly about. And the whole point of today, this evening, is just to find some solutions, just to open a conversation and get you guys involved as well. I mean, the first half we're going to be directing questions specifically to our panellists, so we've got some questions prepared here. But what we are also going to do in the second half of the debate, we're going to have a little intermission so everyone can stand up, go to the toilet, get another coffee and stuff. We're going to have audience questions as well. So if you do have a question, and you can save that to the second half, we've got Seb at the back with all our literature, and he's going to be taking questions so we can get those done in the running order. Or if you have a point that you really want to mention, just stick your hand up, and if we've got one, we'll come to you if we've got time. We're also actually streaming on Platform B FM as well. That's in the corner there with all the sound equipment taking care of us. She's doing a really great job, and we're live currently on the air, so no swearing panelists. And try and keep the audience questions as clean as possible if you can. We're also on Twitter, Prequel_UK, I believe. We've got a couple of hashtags around. We've got hashtag PQT, hashtag equality, hashtag Prequel. Feel free to take a picture, put it up online, share it, get the word out. That's what we're trying to do, trying to widen the circle, widen the debate. So, let's get straight to it. We've got a couple of questions here. We'll start off with the first one. I know that this is an issue that a lot of people are going to have a lot of interesting questions on. How can we make Brexit into a positive thing for this country? And I'll start. Andrew Wills, would you like to start? It should be on. We should be able to speak.
It's on.
Yeah, it should be on.
Thank you. This is one of the questions I've wrestled with. I have to put my hands up. I was on the Remain side of the debate. I hope we're not going to... This is a bit over my combo, but... Anyway, so I was on the Remain side of the debate here, and so I actually think it's going to be an incredibly tough thing to make good stuff come out of Brexit, to be honest. I believe very strongly in open borders across Europe. I believe very strongly in migration of peoples to jobs where they are, opportunities where they are. And I believe I'm a believer in free trade and open markets. All of those things I very much supported as being part of the European Union. That said, we are where we are, and I'm a believer in democracy too. And so for whatever it means, and I understand this gets in people's noses, and to some degree it does mine, I do think Brexit unfortunately has to mean Brexit. Whatever that means, I appreciate it's not an easy thing. But my attitude to that means, therefore, that whatever we are going for, we need to be and remain as open as possible as we can to both of those things, i.e. open trade and open movement of peoples. The only good thing I think, the other thing I would put my hands up for is, I say I was on the Remain side of the debate, but I did not knock on one door or deliver one leaflet through that campaign, because I just assumed that we would win. And I think one of the things that it has actually shaken people like me, and maybe some of you guys, I don't know whether you did get leaflets in the door after that campaign, is it's shaken us out of our complacency. And it means, therefore, that people like us will have to campaign a lot harder than we did to remain open to migration and open to free trade than we bothered to the first time round.
Okay, thank you very much. Jim, do you want to answer that as well?
Yeah. So this was also, for me, quite a difficult question to answer, because as well as part of the Green Party, in which I campaigned quite a lot for Remain. I was at street stalls, I delivered leaflets, I had a lot of discussions. But as well as that, I'm also a European citizen in Brighton, so I also saw my own future here in this country threatened. So for me, it was quite difficult to see some sort of silver lining about the Brexit referendum. So I thought about it for a while, and I think the only thing I can come up with is that whatever it has done, it has definitely opened up a debate that we should really be having. So, for instance, when I was at street stalls, I heard a lot of people bring up the argument that Europe isn't democratic enough, and that's definitely a discussion worth having. And I would say expand that discussion to include the UK. The UK can be more democratic. Should be more democratic, I think. And hopefully, now that we're thinking about such questions, we can also have these discussions here. So while we go into the Brexit negotiations and while we think about what we want for the future here in the UK, we should also think about the arguments that we brought into the referendums. So democracy is one. So we can think about the House of Lords and the first past the post system, and people are thinking about a progressive alliance and thinking about electoral reform, and I think that's definitely a positive thing, and it's definitely activated a lot of people. So yeah, that's my answer.
So it's first past the post in the House of Lords. Is that something that you would perhaps campaign to reform in what way?
Absolutely, yeah. I think we should have. We should strive for a system of proportional representation, as you have in a lot of other countries. Of course, as a member of the Green Party, I wouldn't say that. But I think you can make the argument that the current system is not democratic. So, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Maria, do you want to answer anything to that?
It's probably the hardest question on here, really. I also voted to Remain, so trying to find something positive to say about Brexit, it's difficult. I agree with the other panels when they say that it's obviously opened up a debate and openness for discussions. I also, too, stood on the streets and gave out leaflets and tried to campaign against it, and I also thought that we were just going to sail through it, and I thought, that we weren't going to be part of Brexit. Now, I understand that it's quite a long process anyway, it's going to take us a while to get there. I think the most important thing for me is I've seen how this whole debate is, especially online as well, it was very divisive. Lots of people fell out, that it became very personal. I think we need to come back together and regroup and be strong, because I think part of the political agenda here is to segregate us, and it's another form of social control.
Okay, thank you. Mark, do you want to answer that, Brexit? How can we make it a positive thing? Do you have any ideas?
That way around. So I just want to say, without sounding like a robot, This is Mark Wimborne speaking, not Sussex Police. So it's just for me. The only thing I would sort of say about that is it's an interesting question, the way it's worded. How can we make Brexit into a positive thing in this country? And I think what we need to, the first thing we have to do is recognise that actually, for just over 50%, it is a positive thing if you go by those stats. So you have to kind of, I think we have to kind of move forward through that initial barrier first.
Although 50% isn't 50% of the country, that's only the amount that turned out to vote.
Well, that democratic process.
Definitely, yeah. I just want to make that point.
Yeah. That was the numbers that we had, and that's what the numbers that we're working on. So for those people, whatever those numbers are, it was a positive. So then how we make it into a positive, some people probably no need, because it is what it is. I agree, though, actually, about the fact that there is this horrible wash that came back with it, of people being completely derogatory, and some of the reporting around the people who remained, coming back and attacking the people who were supposedly, idiots who didn't know what they were talking about. I felt that was a really, really poor demonstration of what we would like to have as a civil society. So that's the bit I felt very sort of ashamed about, actually. I saw a lot of social media that was going around that. So I think that generally we do have to accept whatever will be. We have to kind of move forward, hopefully together, rather than as a divided country.
Okay. Mike, do you want to add anything there, Brexit?
Yeah, kind of, sort of following on from Mark a bit, is that it's not necessarily a negative thing in and of itself. I mean, countries like Iceland, Norway, both not part of the European Union, but both possibly the two most progressive countries in Europe. And I think the whole run-up to it was so muddy with strange facts. The fact that you had Farage on one side and Cameron on the other side, so you basically, I won't swear, but you're stuck between two areas of anatomy that sort of weren't offering anything. So they kind of boiled down to a sort of, are you a racist or not, which should be a grown-up decision, and there was no left voice. That was completely lacking. And I think the way to make it a positive thing is to take the discussion back, turn it into a left thing, push ideals. Just because we've left the EU doesn't mean we have left, but just because we're supposed to be leaving the EU doesn't mean we have to stop allowing people into our country. Also the fact that, there's free movement, but only among Europeans, EU members and EEA members. I mean, that in and of itself is a bit of a racist policy. So you've got some liberals on one side saying, oh, it's racist if you vote leave, because we're not letting white Europeans into our country, but at the moment we're having a terrible response to one of the biggest refugee crises the world has ever seen. Which Medicines Sans Frontières refused to take any more donations from the European Union because of their poor handling. We can make it into a positive thing. We just have to work together, not demonise people who have different thoughts than us, and move forward progressively.
Okay.
I just wanted to respond to Mark. You were saying, so two comments. You were saying that for 52% of people it is actually a positive thing. That relies on the assumption that 52% of the people knew exactly what they were voting for, which I very much doubt. I think a lot of people are very confused and believes promises from the Leave campaign, such as the funding for the NHS, etc., etc. So I think there's a lot of confusion, and I definitely don't think it's going to be in the interest of 52% of the people, where necessarily 52% of the people are going to be happy, but eventually decided the negotiations. Then the second comment, I think it's also really important to look at the voters that voted to leave and their age, and the voters that voted to remain and their age, and how long they're actually going to have to live with the outcome of Brexit and negotiations. And I think, I appreciate that there is some room to be positive about working with democracy, but I think that that means that, while it may be a positive thing for some of the voters, people that actually have to go to live with the outcome of this are generally not all too happy about it.
I think that's fair. I mean, wait, just a show of hands, who's under 25 in the audience? And yeah, okay. And how many people actually voted in the EU referendum that were under 25? Sorry, not to be ageist. And how many of you voted Remain? And how many of you voted Leave? So no one voted Leave. Don't feel afraid. It doesn't automatically make you a racist just because you voted Leave. So I think that's definitely quite telling. Everyone in here under 25 who voted Remain. But I mean, there's a lot. I mean, going back to your point, right? You said you were talking about free movement of people. Is that something that you would support in the Schengen zone? You support free movement of people within the European Union?
Yeah, and beyond. I mean, I don't see any reason to stop people coming in or leaving any country. I mean, as a nation ourselves, we kind of move all over the place, kind of whether or not people want us there. So I don't see why we should win when people want to come and live here.
Brilliant. Well, let's move on then. There's enough Brexit talk, because we can talk about that for quite some time, I feel. Let's go on to something a little bit more local now. How many people at the moment ever get a train? How many people got a train in the last month? And how many people are happy with the train service that they're provided with at the moment? And that's a big fat zero just for anyone listening on the radio. Okay, so the next question then. How can we hold Southern Rail and their operating company GCR, Go Near Thames Link, accountable for the inconvenience and misery caused to their travellers in the South East? Mark, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I've got to be careful here because I deal with the protests in Brighton. So I have to be very sensible about not steering this into a difficult sort of area that I'll end up regretting tomorrow morning. But clearly, as with all democracies, what I would say is that the power of the voice is the only thing realistically that is going to actually move this in one direction or the other. There have been some protests up at the station, and there have been some, good sort of obvious discontent around what's going on. It's very difficult. I can't see the ins and outs of where this is exactly stuck now. I can understand the main principles of the argument around the guards and what some of them are proposing, but it's almost like a movable kind of object at the moment, and I think the only thing that can actually influence is obviously the people who use the service. But it's a very tricky one, and it's been going on for a long time now, and the longer protest generally goes on, the more you can see that there isn't actually an easy resolution to it. So, but the power of the voice is a good one.
And out of those just out of interest, those protests, there was an RMT union support protest outside the station a couple of weeks ago. And out of those other protests, have those all been peaceful protests? What's the turnout then like for those? What's the support? Where's the public support from your point of view?
The RMT one was around about 200 people, and yes, they've all been peaceful. So there will be very good-natured, peaceful protests, which we obviously support. So I mean, there's been no issue. And obviously, the union-based protests are all generally very sort of well organised and well behaved and do what they need to do. There's been no issues.
Okay. Andrew, do you want to add anything? Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I do. I think that Southern Rail should be stripped of their franchise.
You're a Tory, mate. You gave it to them.
This is a difficult issue because there are so many things caught up in this besides just the operator. And the way I understand it is, in fact, that Southern Rail have been commissioned by the government to run this service, yet all of the fares that they receive are paid straight back up to the government. It's a very different set of risks and rewards for Southern Rail compared to any other franchisee in the country, which I think is contributing to the ridiculous situation that we have at the moment, where if they cancel a train, it's us as taxpayers lose out rather than the train company itself. I also think we sit there and just see examples of chronic incompetence where they have trains that are cancelled for various reasons. And then after 2 trains are cancelled, the next one is cancelled because there's no crew. You think, well, where was the crew for the previous 2 trains that are not operating because they're broken down? So it just seems to me to be incompetence. It also, I think, if you actually look at the statistics, one of the brilliant things is, if you have a look at it, is that there are detailed statistics on the causes of delays on trains. And if you look at them, actually over the last year, 58% of the causes of delays are actually down to Network Rail rather than Southern trains themselves. So there are clearly problems with Southern Rail, how it operates, how it invests and operates the infrastructure. And so I think we will not solve this unless we solve the problems that sit with Southern Rail as well. And I know this won't be popular in the room, but I also think that the unions bear some responsibility in this as well as management of the company, insofar as I think that there need to be imaginative ways in which guards can be used on trains. I think that independent audits of trains which have guards on as customer service agents rather than as guards operate more quickly because the drivers are able to open and close the doors, so they're more efficient in that respect, and independent audits suggest they're just as safe. So I think there is a dialogue that needs to happen there as well. So I encourage Southern Rail and their management to put that in inverted commas, and the unions need to talk and sort this out because we are suffering as a result of that. But I think there are incompetencies throughout the system, whether it's Network Rail, whether it's the management of Southern Rail, or whether it's the unions.
Okay. I mean, just for some context and background, Southern Rail last year was ranked the worst train operator in the UK. Their CEO last year made £2.8 million, I believe. Please, if someone has any more accurate information, feel free to correct me. So, I mean, obviously you're saying that it's the management that...
One of the biggest shareholders, of course, is SNCF, which is the French state rail owner, so it's quite an interesting dynamic there.
And I mean, Maria, have you got what's your recent experience with the trains? Have you been involved in any of this hassle that's nightmare?
Yeah, I constantly use Southern Rail and stuff to get up to medical appointments for my daughter. I've had non-attendance appointments, which also impinges on my daughter's physical health and appointments. With the strikes as well, it might be a bit controversial, but I think we need to progress in a different way, because I think with the strikes, all that's done is stopping people from getting to work, people are losing money, they're losing their jobs. So I think we need to look at a different way of tackling the problem. So I don't think the way that we're moving forward at the moment is actually progressing or actually helping.
I mean, they've recently just announced that they're striking Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. Was anyone planning to go anywhere for New Year's Eve? And did anyone have any fun New Year's Eve plans, which are now going to be cancelled because they can't get there? I was going to go to London, I was going to go to a cool club. It's not happening. Southern Rail have seen to that. And it's that kind of public service. I mean, Jill, from the Green perspective, obviously I know that Corbyn's in Labour strongly supporting renationalisation of the railways. What's the Green perspective on that?
I and the Green Party also strongly support that. I've been saying that for years, actually. I definitely think that someone should be stripped of their franchise, but I would go a step further. I would say it should be renationalised. I think it's every day, actually. But I do support the strike, and I go up to the picket line and I shake their hands and I say that I support them, and I would encourage you to do the same, because the strike is actually mainly not about pay, it's about safety. The strike's about the new sort of bill that's coming into place, on which there only has to be a driver, so one employee per train, and that's an unsafe situation. So, I definitely support that. I do think that, you can ask the question how effective it has been. So, there's also some legal action, and I support that as well. I think the two should both proceed.
And along with that as well, isn't it, that they want to take away everyone on the train, and if you're a disabled person, you would have to actually phone up 48 hours beforehand so that you get access on and off the train. It's just disgusting.
It's appalling. And I think also that the way that Southern addresses and sort of addresses customers and their own personnel. I don't know if you've seen any of the messaging or have received any of the emails about the strikes. And they're just so aggressive. I'm really, really appalled by that this company is just willing to in principle, set its customers up against its employees. I think that's appalling.
I mean, the most recent thing I think from Southern was the Twitter campaign where it's tweet RMT what your opinion is about the strikes, how the strikes make you feel. Well, a lot of people. That's what a lot of people did. A lot of people responded to those strikes, to those tweets, really roasting Southern Rail. It did quite backfire on them a little bit. If anyone saw the tweet, people were not happy. I mean, Mike, did you see that? Did you see those tweets at all? Have you seen them? You've got an imagination. I mean, what's your opinion? Are you in support of the strikes? Are you back in Southern Rail? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm obviously back the strikes. As with many of the NHS strikes, they're not doing it because they're selfish. They're doing it for safety reasons, working conditions, and in those situations, you do it. People's lives in your hands. So I'm kind of with Corbyn, representing from the Greens, and Spider, the drummer from my punk band, who, whenever he lives in Red Hill, so has to get a train to practice, and every other time he's late because of the trains, he comes in this big 6-foot old school punk, just kicking stuff around. We need to renationalise railways.
Yeah. All right. Quite sensitive stuff. A lot of people, there's a bit of a consensus of renationalising railways, which is not from you. You don't support that. What's your alternative? Would you just say strip Southern Rail of the franchise and give it to another private provider?
I would.
I won't ask you to specify a specific one, but
I would re-tender it and actually look at the contract and make sure that the contract is set up in the interest of the service users rather than the current situation.
Wouldn't matter if the money was going back to the government, like you said.
I think the idea that we had Nirvana when we had British Rail back in the 60s, 70s, 80s is just not true. The idea that there were perfect industrial relations back in those days is just not true. If you look at the passenger numbers now, they're up 50-100% on where they were back in the before privatisation. If you look at freight travel, it's doubled since then on the railways. So there are some incredible benefits from the change in ownership in the railways that it manifested in greater use and much more intensive use of the network. And also if you compare that to what's actually happened in France and Germany, we've seen no growth in railway use in those two countries, which are, I often would say most of the audience would hold up as models of how railways ought to be run. Well, in those countries, in Germany, rail subsidies are 4 times what they are here in France. I'm not sure which around it is actually, but France and Germany, one's 4 times and one's twice. So they actually put a lot more public money into their railways in those countries than we do. Maybe that's got something to do with the service level as well.
I mean, we've got a question, you said at the back there. I mean, we've got a microphone. It's going to stretch. You might need to come up and speak. We've got MC Bo, and that's if you can just unmute the 7th channel.
No swearing, Kelly.
Keep it PG. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, just be speaking about Brexit. Yeah, we're getting out of Europe, etc. The gentleman here has just said, Southern Rail was owned by SACF, Southern Water was owned by French companies, everything's owned by foreign companies. So, if we put out of Europe, who's going to fund that lot? Do we renationalise everything, especially water? Right? We've got our waters in the hands of foreign companies, they charge us VAT on it. They just overcharged us £1.2 billion on our water. And I'm afraid to say that's got to stop. And the only way to do that is to renationalise everything. And not let banks and the corporations in City of London tell us what to do. Banks are the best at Barclays, Rothschilds, all those, they tell us what to do. We've got to stand up and fight back now. And you're the generation to do it.
Do you want to respond to that? No? Okay. That's fine. We'll move on. I mean, we've kind of gone back onto Brexit a little bit. So, I mean, something that's been into Brexit, I think a question that Brighton is relatively diverse as a community, and a lot of people. There's been a huge rise in hate crime in post-Brexit vote. How can we as a community prevent the rising tide of racism and hate crime that's followed Brexit, and how do we make minority groups feel welcome in our society? Bryn?
I suppose it's just, like I said before, is to try and get back together, to work together and support each other, welcome anybody that comes into the country. I also agree with freedom of movement, freedom of speech. Sorry, can you say the question again?
How can we as a community prevent the rising tide of racism that's followed Brexit, and how do we make minority groups feel welcome in our society?
Continue more with the grassroots projects, I think, being on the ground, being on the front line, debates like this, using social media, left-wing journalism, stuff like that.
I just want to answer this question from my own perspective, which probably aligns with the Green Party's perspective as well. I'm European, as you can hear from my accent. To me, Brexit and being identified as an immigrant was quite a humbling experience. My first reaction was, me? Because I'm just not, I came here to study, I'm an academic, I'm white, It was a humbling experience, and in a way it was an experience I learned a lot from. So, but then it wasn't necessarily a positive feeling, I think. So especially when I was campaigning for Remain, I definitely had a lot of people shout at me to go back to my own country, and discussions in the street that turned into aggression, and that was difficult for me. And what for me is the most convincing is if people actually not just react to racism, but actually also do some positive messaging. So, for instance, if I see a sign in a window which says "immigrants welcome here" or "refugees welcome here," that's something that I take to heart. And so I would encourage everyone to do that as well as a community. So, of course, also respond to racism and on negative talk about immigrants and defend movement of people as well as of goods. Also think about what you can do in terms of positive messaging.
Okay. On the topic of hate crime, you said you had a few discussions that we've got a question.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Is the lead going to stretch?
Hopefully. Technology. Okay.
It's not so much a question as it's more an observation with regards to what we can do to combat hate crime. And this is regardless of which particular hate crime we're talking about, whether it's immigrants, migrants, refugees, the disabled. There has been an increase in hate crime over the past 6 years, which has sort of become very marked since the Brexit vote. And I think that is something we, each and every one of us, every individual, is going to have to take responsibility for. If we see it happening around us, as we're walking in the street, as we're sitting on the bus, we should intervene. I'm not saying we should take on whoever is shouting the racist abuse or threatening the disabled or whatever, but go up to the person that is being abused or that is being harassed. Talk to them about the weather. Talk to them about a book you've read. Talk to them about a film you've watched or would like to see. Ignore the attacker. Ignore the violator. Get them to interact with you. And the violator will eventually give up. even if this doesn't work every time, it will work enough times. And that is what matters, so that the people that are being attacked by some numbskull, because that is ultimately what they are, unthinking numbskulls, they will feel protected by the other people around them. And that is the only way we're going to combat it.
Definitely. Thank you very much. We've got a hand up in the front row here.
Hi, I definitely agree with some of what you said then. If all of the discrimination and hate that was going on was based on conscious and malicious abuse, I think that a lot of the racism, hate crime that I see, and I'm glad to say I don't see a lot as much as I've seen in other areas of the country. A lot of it's based on ignorance as well as really conscious and malicious as hate, and quite often violators might not realise that, you know, in the same way as bullies sometimes don't realise they're bullies. I think that if we are to combat it and reduce it, then it's about increasing awareness as well, so pointing out when people are being offensive that they might not know. Something I wanted to say though, my observation was that in response to your question, something I've noticed is quite unique about Brighton in comparison to other cities that I've worked and lived, is that in diversity terms, it's quite integrated, Brighton. There aren't any neighbourhoods which are particularly Asian or black. And, you know, in many ways, I think that's a great thing, because it's a model of integration in some ways. On the other hand, I can think of other cities where I've lived and worked where I really like the feel you get in certain neighbourhoods and the culture that comes across from that, and the things you can learn about other cultures because of the concentrations. And I guess that leads to my question, perhaps on a political and a policing level. Having experience of Brighton in that sense of being quite an integrated place, do you think that adds to or takes away from community cohesion and awareness of diversity in the context of hate crime and integration?
I know you've got a response. Does anyone else have quite a bit? Anyone else got a response? Andrew, did you want to?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts I've put up on that point about Brighton's diversity. And I lived in London until 2006, in Newcastle before that. And actually, I don't think Brighton's as diverse as we think we are. So we see a lot of, you go around Churchill Square and you just see a sea of white faces to me. I mean, you notice that particularly coming in from London. So I don't think we are quite as diverse as we like to think we are. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we sometimes feel more comfortable than maybe we ought to. But can I just a few remarks I just wrote down there. Firstly, you noticed the person who said smash the fascists, and obviously I hate fascists as much as everybody else in this room. But one of the quite first things, when folks like the English Defence League come down here, one of the questions I always ask myself is whether it's a good idea to go and have counter demonstrations against them, or to just turn your back as they walk past. And sometimes I think that can be a lot more powerful than screaming and chucking stuff and ending up with a great big army. So it's just about how we react to fascists sometimes, I think, can enhance our anti-fascist credibilities by responding in maybe more of a pacifist way than smashing the fascists. I think the answers to the question itself lie around two particular areas, one of which is education. And I think actually one of the good things that Brighton City Council has been great at through Green, Tory and Labour administrations is promoting diversity and acceptance within the schools, and there's a lot of work that goes on there, and I think any of us who participated in any of that would have seen that excellent work, and it's going on all the time. Governor education as well, to make sure governors are asking the right questions of their teachers and the classes are actually reflecting that as well. So there's great work there that you can see. I think the other problem that's sort of, and I know we're going to talk about homelessness, but I actually think one of the big problems, particularly in the southeast, that causes a lot of this hostility is a fight over housing. And until we end up building more and more houses and get housing costs down, this battle over housing is going to promote, if promote a hatred of outsiders and newcomers because they will see it as a threat to housing rights. And I think one of the answers is we just got to get housing costs down.
I know you have got. If I go to June, I can come back to you.
Yeah, I was sure to comment. Yeah, because I think you hit the nail on his head actually there, because I've been really amazed with sort of the media's portrayal of some sort of mythical creature that's an immigrant. I'm a physicist and I quite like the Schrödinger immigrant, the immigrant who simultaneously takes your job and takes benefits. So you wonder how that's possible. It seems like that immigrant doesn't even have to exist. I think there are towns in Wales where there's practically zero European immigration, and people have all voted to leave massively. So I think definitely like integration and having your neighbours next to you, as people that you know and in your circles, it's definitely something that would sort of enhance cohesion and tolerance. Yeah, absolutely.
Maria, do you want to?
Firstly, I would not agree with Andrew when he says that Brighton is not diverse. My spectrum of friends go global, it's across the globe, so I don't really believe that. Secondly is in response to the housing crisis and building more homes, how about we make use of all the abandoned properties that are all over the UK?
1.5 million.
There is enough properties in the UK to make sure that every homeless person is housed, and we can help the refugee crisis.
I better come in on just to go back to the original question and just make a comment about when we talk about the rising tide of racism. There is an issue, without doubt, around the reporting of crime. So what we don't see, and I can say this with reasonable conviction, is we haven't seen a reported rise of crime, hate crime, in Sussex, and not in Brighton either. There has been a slight, I believe, increase since going back to this sort of the Brexit issue and everything. However, it has not been a vast increase. And one of the areas that we do have to work really hard, not just at a police level, but is to actually connect to those communities and actually make sure that there is confidence within those communities. And quite a lot of the work, certainly within the Safe in the City teams that we have, is about reaching out to groups that otherwise don't feel that they have a reporting route to get these messages in. And once we can actually start dealing with those crimes, then we will be quite robust. And I think Brighton, and I agree that Brighton is, well, certainly I think it's a pretty good role model for a very diverse city around the country. And if you look at LGBT communities and pride events that we hold here, we are seen as a really, really forward community as far as accepting diverse communities. So I think there's work to be done, and the police have a big role in that. But I think we are a pretty good city when it comes to diversity, I feel.
And tolerance of.
Get that diversity thing, a sea of white faces. Are white faces make us all the same? No. Also, so like Brighton, we are a diversity, we all have unique values. And this is what people are here to talk about, so I'm really glad that the conversation's in here and we are going to go soon. I just want to say that down with the fascists, that's not what we're here for tonight at all. Prequel are about equality, and this is exactly what we hope to muster. And but we are prequel, and what's the line, guys?
The war is equal.
That's what we're not an angry group.
Definitely no. The prequel is all about equality, and Mike, I know you've got 1 point. So basically, Mike, if you respond, then we're going to go to a quick 10-minute break. So let's say what you're going to say, Mike.
Yeah, cool. Just going back to the original question, and just this sort of myth that it came because of the Brexit vote. Like, racism has been a massive problem in this country for years and years, and we haven't fixed it. And this idea that 2 years ago everything was fine. And not just racism, sexism, homophobia, classism. They are massive problems, and got thrown off my.
Talking about massive problems in sexism and classism and racism that have been here.
Predating Brexit.
Yeah, predating Brexit. More than 2 years ago.
Yeah, and all the people in various groups, just because they have a token thing like women are allowed to vote, they're still massively underpaid compared to men doing the same jobs and have to achieve way more in their particular job. We allow marriage between homosexuals legally, but it's still incredibly homophobic in various areas. I mean, Wales was before Plymouth. It's not somewhere you want to be like out and out in public, these groups are completely underrepresented in government, in media, and until this sort of changes, it's going to carry on with this dormant racism that's going to peak every time some flashpoint like Brexit comes along with a hateful campaign.
Yep.
Thank you, thanks a lot, thank you. And thanks to all of our panelists who responded to that, thank you to any questions. We've reached the end of this segment, so what's going to happen, we're going to have a quick 10-minute break. Stand up, get some blood thrown around, there's toilets, follow signs to the toilets, go through those doors, take a right, go down there, get a tea and coffee, I think there might be a couple of bits of cake left if you're lucky. We're going to come back at 25 past 8.
Save me some cake.
Save Maria some cake, did you hear that? So if you do have any questions that you want to ask or that you want to be asked for you, if you're not happy coming up and asking them yourself, Seb at the back of the literature chair, he's got a form you can fill out with all your questions down.
Avoided that one.
We don't really want to run much later than 9 o'clock, might run a little over. But I'll start off, we've got a couple of questions about homelessness, and we've got one here as well. I think that one thing we really want to cover, what's actually been being done, and what can be done by the council or the wider society to deal with homelessness in our communities and ensure we have no more deaths on our streets. Maria, I know you're going to have something to say about that, so I'll follow straight over to you.
Cool, where do I start? As I said, we should sort of crack down on idle landlords and properties that are all over the UK. We could do biddings to schemes for the government for funding to do up hostels, to do up places that are derelict. Suggestions are that they do maybe a programme where people who are homeless go and actually do up these properties themselves. They learn on the job skills training, they have somewhere to stay at that time. As you know, like people I work with, the Love activists, they also put in their proposal for a housing strategy. They've been in talks with the council for about the last year, but it seems at the moment it's all talk and there's no real action. We'd like to see a change in their severe weather protocol so that they take into consideration other elements, snow, rain, wind, hail, and I don't think that people should have to sit out on the streets for 2 to 3 consecutive nights before they open up these services to people. From the council's perspective, I suppose, it's about time that the councils and the authorities start standing up to central government and actually taking some responsibility and not passing the buck back to central government.
Mike, do you have anything you want to add to that on the issue of homelessness?
No, that's pretty explanatory, yeah. At some point.
That's fine. Mark, from the point of police, what is the stance and what is the general way of dealing with people speaking?
Well, I'm going to phone a friend because I have a Sergeant Egan in the room who works on the street community team in Brighton. So we're going to sort of push across a little bit. But there is a sort of depth to the strategic partnership work that we actually employ in Sofa City. Obviously, Darren can actually mention that a bit more.
My name is Sergeant Darren Egan. Mark invited me to a small meeting. I wasn't expecting this, so I'm not very well prepared. I'm the sergeant of the street team. One of the primaries of Sussex Police is the street community and dealing with issues on the street. It's quite interesting listening to some of what's going on there and being said with regards to the housing. It's my personal opinion, you know, obviously we need a bit more housing, but I don't know, what do people think? You know, what do you want to know what we're doing?
Spice.
Yeah.
What are you doing about spice?
Yeah, that's a very good point actually. It's one that I've actually emailed yourself before about to Sergeant Member, is that I'll just be downright honest. I think that drug was actually designed for people like that on the streets. It doesn't show on the piss test. It was legal for them to have it on the streets. Since the ban has come in, the streets are still flooded with spice, and it is responsible for a lot of deaths on our streets in the last year or two. I would like to actually ask that when the ban came in, what measures actually the police and your departments took to take that off of our streets, and was it disposed of properly?
I mean, obviously, when we come across drugs, we see them deal with them with regards to what the street community. But again, you know, the homeless, there is, again, my personal opinion, I've been doing this job for about 6-7 months now. And I've been on Brighton Division 22 years, quite a long time. And I've gone across pretty much all the departments, and this was a bit of an eye-opener. You know, although I've worked the streets for around 22 years, and a lot of them that sleep in the streets, you don't even notice it. You know, it's only when I started doing this job myself, actually, even when I'm on duty, I start noticing people in doorways.
How did you not notice them?
No, of course I notice them, but I don't notice how many there were.
And that's just the people that make themselves visible?
Obviously there's people that are visible on the main routes, but there's also people that are not visible. But, you know, my job is to sort of get out there, engage with them, and support the outreach workers. You know, it's a shame that some of them aren't here, some of the work that those guys are doing, National Mungos, Equinox, Pavilions, they're working flat out. You know, we started the other morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, the temperature went down, we all agreed to come in early, we went out there to make sure that, you know, we could get as many people as we can to, you know, if they're not going to get to the services, we could get to them.
Just going back to the previous question about the spice and the drug like spice, can you actually answer what measures have been taken, or Mark, if you can answer it in any more depth, what has been done?
Obviously, clearly, when the spice sort of phenomenon really started, there wasn't specific legislation around it. It was very difficult because it was an evolving drug that actually was hard for us to actually put into a bracket of controlled substance. So that was the first big barrier. Now that has changed. But with all drugs, I'm not just saying spicy, with all drugs, there is a big issue at a society level. And the police have a role to play in obviously enforcing the law around drugs generally. But there is, I think it's very, we see the top layer of drug use within the city. We don't see, obviously there's organised crime groups that deal at a much sort of bigger level, and that's dealt with by other departments. But as a Brighton policing issue, on the street teams, in the Safe in the City, I just struggle a little bit. So yes, we will deal with it when we actually have the opportunity to deal with drug issues. But there is a far, I think, greater issue around society, around the community aspect again, as to how this drug, in particular spice, has sort of taken hold of those communities, those vulnerable communities. We all have a role to play, but I think the policing part is not just a quick fix. I can walk out there now, I can probably walk most places in Brighton, and probably seize a drug of some description. What does that actually do? And a lot of people here would probably go, well, actually, cannabis doesn't hurt anyone, so why are you bothering about that person? Well, where is that line? Where does that line sit? And how, you know, does me going out there, just taking one sort of joint on someone, stop that bigger picture, which I think we all need to kind of dip into?
I think we'll steer clear of the cannabis debate, because I think that again is another one that can take sort of very a big tangent. And I won't comment on the audience in front of me, but I'm sure people have some serious questions. I do see a question in the audience now. I do want to move on. If you have still got one at the end, we'll come back to you, because we've got quite a few questions. We've got quite a few questions to cover. What has been brought up as well. This is a bit more of a morality one. Mark, again, you can speak on this. we've had issues where, especially with the March, I know that Order 60, Act 60 was enacted, which terrorist laws, and they were due to be detained. Well, we know we've had stories of people being detained without any criminal action, being released without charge after being detained for up to 7 hours. What point does it become morally indefensible to simply follow orders and enforcing laws which criminalise the innocent, which target certain groups of society?
Okay, got to be careful here. There's some people spotting happening. All officers, right, will have to justify their actions around what they are doing in terms of detention, arresting, and dealing with people out on the street. So, for everything that is done in policing terms, you have to, as an officer, you have to justify what you are doing. Okay, and the very heart of that is the use of force. So I can't put handcuffs on someone because Sergeant Egan tells me to. Okay, I have to justify that because I am the one who has to go to court and actually say why I did what I did. Okay. That said, okay, there is a sort of a slightly bigger question there. We saw this a lot at Balkan about this sort of question around are you just following the state line? Well, and this is my personal opinion, I would always strive to do what I believe, again, the bigger society is expecting of me. Now, at somewhere like Balkan, I'm using that as a bit of a mantra here, we had about 100 people there every day, okay? It was clearly a very, very emotive issue. It was a very big issue at the time. However, I also had to recognise that there was sort of 70 million people that weren't at Balkan. And there is always a balance as to what you are doing as a police officer. Is it for the 100 people or is it for the rest of society? You have to make a judgment as to what you believe society is expecting of you. And I think most of the time, police officers act very, very genuinely and sincerely as to what they believe is the right thing to do and what they have a mandate to do by the people of the country. Well, there are individual cases, I will just say there are clearly always going to be issues. There are individual cases, and I'm sure these examples could well be part of those individual cases.
I have
Do you want to relay a few, Maria? Do you want to give any examples?
Well, you're saying sort of like you have to justify what you do. As you know, we do homeless outreach every week. A couple of years ago, on Christmas Eve and on Queen's Road, there was a squad with minors in there from 18 and under. The police actually removed them from that building around Christmas time, which is fair enough under the squatting laws. But why did they have to leave all their belongings, their sleeping bags and everything inside, so they're all assembled outside, freezing in the cold? You cannot justify that to me. You cannot also justify penalising people that do not have nothing, hiding them from people. You need to deal with the problem. What's the point in using the Vagrancy Act, which is 1824, for people for begging? We are taught in society that if we need help, that we should ask for it. How is someone sitting on the street, non-aggressive, asking for help and money any different to businesses that display tipping messages everywhere?
I don't know if we're going to come back about the begging bit, but certainly what I do know, it's not like is this okay, so I'm going to have to be a bit careful here, but essentially I am very aware that when you're talking about begging in particular, there is generally far, far more issues than simply the begging. If we are actually looking at dealing with someone for begging, it's usually because we haven't got any other options to try and actually deal with that person. And it may sound very bizarre, but actually if we're arresting someone, we have arrested people for begging to ensure that they are safe. And you're going to go, well actually, that doesn't seem right. If someone is actually about to sit there overnight without proper protection, and we haven't got any other powers, and we are seeing someone who's begging, then actually, from our perspective, it may be the safer option to actually deal with that person for that offence and actually take them to a place of safety. And I don't think it's right. I don't think it's the right answer, but I think it's the police option that we have to employ there. to ensure safeguarding people.
There should be some aftercare with that though, shouldn't there? Well, what happens then is they are penalised, and then you put in the dispersal orders, which then actually pushes these people out of the area, so they're more isolated, and they're not, they have less chance of actually contacting the services and getting the additional help that they need. I've seen homelessness rise. I mean, from my personal view, the system failed me. I was in care, came from the care system, I slipped for the care system, and I was actually no fixed abode from the age of 14 to the age of 27. So I've been on the streets, I've done all that. You're seeing a lot of young children now that are coming out of children's homes, and if we don't give them love, some decent housing and decent education, they are the ones that then go on to be homeless, and that's their lifestyle. And with the cuts for the under 25s, what chance have they got? With the economy system as well, where they've got to contract hours, how are you supposed to ever build any sort of life when the system is designed to fail these people?
One thing is you've hit it hard there, and you have quite rightly said that there is a much bigger, that's my point. The police is one little part of that jigsaw, okay, and you've touched on a lot of areas there that are part of that much bigger piece.
Okay, well, we'll move on. Thank you on both sides for your comments. I mean, we'll stay on the theme of following orders and what point that become, and what point where laws are criminalising this and targeting certain groups. But I know you've got personal experience in where refusing to fight or serving in certain wars. What was your stance on that issue? Where does it become unacceptable to simply follow orders?
I mean, with the statement following orders, I was just following orders. What you're basically doing is you're putting obedience to a system, structure, an organisation, institution above your moral responsibility to other people, to other living things. And that in itself is kind of morally indefensible anyway, but it becomes even more so when the organisation, institution they represent is involved in unlawful, morally reprehensible acts. For me personally, and the other thing is it is a personal thing, so for me personally, continuing to serve in the military became morally indefensible when I was able to put some historical context behind military. That was during a deployment to Diego Garcia, which is a small atoll of islands in the Indian Ocean that was at one time a slave plantation. And while on there, I saw the remnants of the slave trade and learned more about the role the military played in it, in the Atlantic slave trade, and leading up to it. And then modern day, when it was with the release of the Afghan warlords, the Iraq War diaries, and particularly the collateral murder video, which is a very disturbing video that just shows sort of indiscriminate killing of civilians. And when you're in institutions, be it the police, the military, you're kind of stuck in this bubble where you don't really get any outside information. So when you do get this this different view of how it is, you just, it can really change the way you think. And at that point, you know, for me personally, I couldn't follow any orders for that institution because I thought they were morally reprehensible. And, you know, a question I was asked at various times was, well, why did you join? It was normally in that voice as well. And I joined at the time because I didn't know any better. You know, I left school at 16, prime, and you will find the majority of people serving in the military do not have A-levels or university education. We did not have a grasp of the complexities of geopolitics around the Middle East or any sort of historical thing to do with the Atlantic slave trade. You just think you're doing the right thing, and there's a massive campaign at the moment, loads of recruitment videos. I can't watch anything on 4OD without someone trying to tell me to join the Air Force, join the Marines, join the Navy. And it's one of those periods where they're just ramping up recruitment and they're making it sound really cool and fun, and kind of leaving out the whole sort of illegal wars, bombing of Syria, and many other things. So yeah, for me, following orders is most morally indefensible. I mean, in itself, it is morally indefensible, and it becomes more so when the institution you're part of is acting against the interest of common good and decency.
Question from, I think it's Dave's got a question, so make a point very
Well, it's
quickly.
just going back to the veterans, the fact that they fight for their queen and their country, and then they come back. We know that there is a big, large percentage of veterans that are left on the streets to rot with post-traumatic stress disorder after they fought for their queen and country. That's not right either. 90% of London is homeless veterans.
Dave had a question. We've got a question. Where are you there? You there? Can we get a mic to him? Yeah? Feel free to stand up or sit down if you wish.
Got tired legs. It goes back to the point on homelessness, but I probably want to address it to Andrew actually. With the sort of high levels of homelessness that we've got in the UK, and the millions of people that live in cramped conditions, especially in Brighton, paying exorbitant rents, is it ever justifiable to own more than one home which you're not using, or own a bigger home than you might need for yourself?
Wow. I need to take a step back from this, because I think I did say in answer to another question before that I think the answer to a lot of problems is more building of more houses.
There's lots of houses which are unoccupied.
There aren't that many though. I just
There are. The Freedom of Information Act in 2014 that was given from the council to somebody that wrote in. They gave up those quotas, and the phenomenal buildings that actually the council owned themselves was just appalling. If you look around the town centre, there are loads of shop buildings that have been derelict for like 5, 6, 7, 8 years or more. The council know that these properties are empty, and they're just not stepping up to the mark.
There's 10 empty buildings in the UK for every single road person. That was 2 years ago.
I believe this one. Can we just get that on the mic? Sorry, just for the stream, I just want to get that on the mic again.
I was just going to raise awareness that 2 years ago, statistics were that there was 1.5 million empty buildings in the UK. That worked out with the number of homeless people at the time. There was 10 empty properties for every single homeless person, and I'm sure that's increased by now too.
I mean, to be honest, the question, there was a lot of points in the question you're making there about whether it's morally appropriate for someone to own 2 houses and someone else to own none. To my mind, that's not so much of a problem if we're able to build houses for enough housing people. I don't know the stats, I have to tell you. I can't comment on that. I'm sure there are enough empty properties to house homeless people. I'm sure that's the case. That's a very different question to whether there are sufficient homes for people to make them affordable for people in the first place, and that's why I think we need to be building. I was up at Sussex University last week and saying to them, if it were me, I would allow you to build on the fields either side of this to put student accommodation on those fields to free up housing within Brighton Hove for families or for individuals. So I think we just need to be building stuff. That to me seems to be the answer to this.
We've got quite a few questions in the audience.
Sorry, I just think that's a really good question. Can I quickly? Yeah. I think that's a really good question, and I would pose it slightly differently. I would say, should we think about houses as assets, or should we think about houses as homes? And I think we should think about houses as homes. And if we do so, we definitely need to drastically change our policy around housing. And I think Maria had some really good suggestions earlier. And I think we should think about reshaping our housing policy to deter investors, speculative investors. And there are very obvious ways of doing so. You can do it by rent controls, or you can do it by land value tax. And,
rent caps.
Yeah, rent caps. So, yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Thank you. We've got another question from Anthony on our schooling system. Anthony, where are you? We'll come back to you. I know there are quite a few questions in the audience. Remember those questions. We've got a couple written down that we'll go to first, but we do.
Let Bree speak about some point.
I mean, we've got quite a few questions. Do you want to answer the question that you wrote down here about about schooling systems content?
Yeah, if I can remember it. You just want to read it. Basically, I just wanted to say something before you do. I think we're skirting on it, but no one's really said it. You've got it in your information. Let's not even think that I'm a mad conspiracy theorist. Let's just say it's true. There is a global elite that controls the planet, and all you guys who are working in certain establishments, authorities, are taking information from the top. It's obvious. You spoke the most truth. I know what your name is. No. But my heart's beating 10 to the dozen. This has to stop, and we're the ones who are going to stop it. Simple. And we're doing that, so thanks Elijah for setting it up. You know? But my point is, we get programmed. As a child, as soon as we go into school, we don't realise it. Like you said, it took you from the age of 16, you still went into the army, you had no idea what you were doing. You thought it was a cool thing to do. Yeah, let's shoot some people. It's fucking ludicrous, isn't it?
I think the question you're really trying to get there, I think, when you're talking about school, I don't mean to cut you off there. I mean, what you've written down here, has the schooling system and the content of the schooling system affected our ability to create a community and to work together? And I mean, really, I know that you've got something to say about that already. Mike, if I go to you first, I know you haven't spoken that much so far.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of does relate to the things we were speaking about before, and the housing crisis and stuff. And essentially, the neoliberal system that we have, it favours competition, but it also puts profits way before people. And with the schooling system, straight from day one, and they've started bringing in exams way earlier now, you're competing against everyone else in your class to get to A-levels, to then compete to get to universities, to then compete for employment. And if you look at other schooling systems, such as Norway, where they don't really start formal lessons until 8 years old, they don't have proper homework, and yet they have the highest literacy and numeracy rates. Also,
That's right.
oh, sorry. Yeah, represent Scandinavia.
And within that schooling system as well, the other children that are from, liberal families and stuff, they go to school and these children are penalised and they try to shut them up. I know that the government had introduced a scheme where they wanted to have teachers report back any signs of children that show any anti-establishment. My daughter was one of those.
I think there's a lot of strong views here on the idea of young people and education.
I just wanted to make one last point about the homeless thing, is that we've talked about rough sleepers. We still now have talked about the amount of people that are stuck in hostels, in emergency accommodation, and how much the council authorities are actually making of these people living in poverty. I lived in Percival Terrace 12 years ago. I was homeless on the streets of Brighton. I actually left that accommodation because of the state of it. These services have not improved at all. If you want to work when you're living in a hostel, if you're working, it's like a £200 a week rent. How is anybody supposed to ever work themselves out of that situation? And how long are we going to let the government and these people keep making money off of people's misery?
We've got quite a few questions. I know I've got a question there and yours and a question there as well. I'll do one more question before we go down and we'll go to you two, because we've only got about 10 more minutes left before we've got to pack up. So this question is from Claudia, and that's again, it's going back to the idea of young people education. How do we persuade more young people to vote? Again, talking about the EU referendum like we were earlier, how do we persuade more young people to vote? Does anyone have a response on that they want to give?
Give them something to vote for.
Yeah.
Give them a choice. There's no choice.
Give them something to vote for. I mean,
Bring back spitting image.
Julie, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I don't actually have a response. I wish I had a response. I'm trying to find one this year. Yeah, I've actually been, I work in the school. I've actually been quite surprised at the sort of, I don't know, kind of passive attitudes and disconnect that young people feel towards politics. But I do also think that enthusiasm and that political sort of activism, I guess, is there. We just haven't found a way to connect to it. Because, you know, last week I organised a climate change mock panel, like in my classroom, and some students that I never thought were, that would connect to politics were very passionate about climate change. And I just feel like somewhere down the line we lose them in our schooling system and in our society, and I wonder why. So I'm trying to answer that question as well.
I'll move on to, if you want to make a very quick point, we've got 2 audience questions.
It's something that extremely interesting to me is why young people don't get involved. One thing is I disagree with my own party on this, about I think 16-year-olds should be able to vote, and I think we're wrong on that. But the thing is, I think young people think they can change the world through using social media. What they don't understand is the real power of political parties. And I was just chatting to someone in the break before. And when we picked our candidate to fight Caroline Lucas in Pavilion in, what would it be, 2000, well, before the last election, we had 16 members made that decision as to who was our party candidate in that constituency. And, we didn't have a great deal of chance of winning, but we may well have done. And you think the power that those 16 party members had over selecting a candidate. And so my advice to young people is join the party and change the party from within.
Okay, so we've had two questions from that for quite a long time. So, lady over there with the...
I don't know, I don't believe I'm going to ask this question, but how much do you believe that democracy is the right form of government, and does anyone have a suggestion of some sort of other way of working that might? Because from what I'm feeling is that through social media and stuff like that, it feels like there's more togetherness, and that's great, and more compassion that's being bred through that. But I kind of feel a dark side to being this sort of feeling that maybe democracy now is being washed so heavily because by being monitored, and so the government have more control through more togetherness in some way, if that makes sense. So I'm sort of jaded to believe that democracy is going to work.
Why do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see some proper democracy in this country, because there isn't really any. The voting system we have, it doesn't represent the people. I mean, what was it, 37% gets you a majority amount of seats in the House of Commons? Yeah, they're annoyed. So, yeah, I mean, I think democracy should, and we're still, I mean, when did women get the vote? It wasn't that long ago, it was within 100 years. Or just
1919,
boom.
after the First World War.
I think it's a key thing to point out that democracy actually originates from the ancient Greek democracy, and it means the people rule, and it's whether we actually agree, do the people rule or not. But
an interesting thing with Athenian democracy is that the people who voted for wars were the people who are going to go and fight them.
Yeah.
Not just a bunch of old white men that have been chosen by various councils who have got no connection whatsoever to anyone who's going to be hurt on either side.
David, the red hat, you had a question quite a little while ago. You still got something you want to say then?
Point out to the prequel lot that when I was your age and started renting, there was a thing called the fair rent legislation in the private sector. So people weren't actually allowed to rent out tiny little rooms for £150 a week. I never understood why New Labour didn't bring back fair rent legislation. It's the same as you're saying about rent caps. I know a lot of people who work full-time who have actually been homeless because, like you say, on a normal job you can't raise £2,000 for the first month's rent and deposit.
Gentrification.
Pardon?
It's gentrification, yeah.
Exactly, so I'd like to ask, and Conservative please, why isn't the fair rent legislation even being talked about? I bring it up quite a lot, but nobody wants to touch it, and I don't know why.
I'll give you one sentence answer to that. My view is rent controls end up reducing investment in housing and therefore reduce building.
Good.
Supply.
Don't know, we've got a building.
That's my view.
So that again, that is just classic profits before people.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. I mean, something that we've got with here. I know you've got a question at the back there, so if we have got time, we'll come to you. This is by B, who's someone that identifies as a left wing. She's very disappointed. They're very disappointed in by the classes and ageist comments coming from left wing parties. How can we ensure that we don't become as prejudiced as the bigots we strive to defeat? Very good question. Does anyone have a response to that very quickly? Junior, and then we'll go to you, Bruce.
Yeah, I wanted to start with what was actually meant to be my opening comment. That was, I wanted to compliment everyone in this room because I think you are the people that are going to be community leaders and front runners of social change. But also because this meeting seeks to unify and bring together a lot of different sort of people that would associate with different parties. It's non-partisan and potentially different groups in society. So I think we should, initiatives like this and initiatives like, for instance, the Sussex Progressives are the way forward to exactly ensure that we don't become as, as sort of, how did it put,
as prejudiced as the bigots we strive to defeat.
Yeah, I can't do that any better. Yeah.
Maria, did you want to say something very quickly?
So the question again?
How do we ensure we don't become as prejudiced as the bigots we strive to defeat? Particularly in left-wing parties.
Yeah, I mean, I personally believe that there has to be a balance there. I don't think that you can fight anger with anger. There's different ways of lobbying, direct actions, etc. And I agree with the fact that it is just as detrimental to be fully left-wing than it is to be fully right. There has to be an equal balance in between.
I think that's all we've got time for, unfortunately. We've got to pack up. I mean, what we do want to say is, I mean, we've got a few thank yous before we head out. But first, a massive thank you to all of our panellists. I mean, obviously this wouldn't be possible without them. Also, a massive thank you to you, the audience, everybody who's come and spoken, come and participate. Really appreciate it. I've got to make these very, very quick because we do have to pack up before we get kicked out. A big thank you to our sponsors that have helped us with funding for this event. Wouldn't have been possible without you. We do want to say a massive thank you to Audio Active and the use of the FPA. That's big. Also, we do a big round of applause at the end just to save everyone's hands and time. Big thank you to Platform B and Nats for supporting us with the streaming. Thank you to Brighton Youth Assembly, to Green Party, to the Love Activists, and for everyone involved in organising and putting this event off. It's been a real pleasure to actually have this and bring.
Can I just ask, is it just going to be like a one-off event? I think it'd be good to keep this sort of thing rolling.
It's been really great to see such a huge turnout. We never expected a response this fantastic and participation of people from all different kinds of communities. So I think consensus being we'll be organising another one of these hopefully at some point in the new year over the next over the next the rest of the year, we're going to do homeless outreach with Prequel, who will get, I think we'll get everyone from Prequel up on the stage just so you can see who exactly was involved in this event. We've got one.
Yeah, just we've been filming this all night for Truthferretfilms. If you go on YouTube, like our Facebook page, this will all be up there in the next day or so, couple of days. This whole Truthferretfilms. Oh well, Mark knows. Ask Mark.
Okay, so
Truthferretfilms. You'll see a lot more than this, but this is
also going to have
Truthferretfilms.
Truthferretfilms. I do apologise. So no problem if you can't leave, but we do really have to wrap up. So thank you so much to everyone. You can find us on Facebook, Prequel, facebook.com/Prequel UK. You can get all of our lectures still at the back there. The stream from this will be on hopefully some point soon. But thank you so much all for coming, and see you very soon. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we've just exited the building after the conclusion of a very, very good meeting and a very fruitful meeting, and I'm here with Mo. Maybe you'd like to tell us how it went for you, Mo?
I thought today was really quite interesting. I think it's very important that you get both sides of the story so that people can do their own research and come to their own conclusions. Some of the stuff that I heard coming from what would, I suppose, be the other side of the party, I can see some similarities from conversation where we might be able to meet in the middle, which I think is important to keep on having these discussions, because like I said in the debate, part of the problem is the segregation between everybody. So if we can come to a compromise or find some middle ground, I think that is something to work on, and I think there were some good questions and answers from everybody on the panel, and things that you have to take into consideration.
There was also good questions from the floor, with one about spice, for instance. That was something you picked up on very well, because you've had experience of it, dealing with it. I mean, could you tell people about spice?
Spice, it seems to be a drug that was created for people that are on the streets, the same way as the smack was with the travellers in the 80s, etc. It's another designer drug I see that is intent on decreasing the masses. So it's a genocide drug. The fact that it doesn't show up in piss tests, why would it not show up in piss tests? So, it's designed for these people, and with alcohol itself, it's a lethal combination. As we saw, there was 5, 6, 7 deaths over Christmas. At least 3 of those were induced by spice.
Of course, the prison system at the moment is such that spice is a big problem in prisons as well. They're getting in with drones, etc. I mean, do you see these kids coming out of prison onto the streets with the same problems?
Yep, you see people that are going into prison and they're actually clean, and they're coming out with spice addictions, where, once upon a time it would have been smack or whatever it was in the prison. The drug just changes, but the situation's just the same.
So, just to conclude, with the drugs aspect of it, especially now the prisons and the police and everything being privatised, like G4S are running everything in Lincolnshire, etc. Do you expect that problem to improve or get worse?
I don't think the banning of spice has actually done anything to help it. I mean, all they have to do is tweak the formula, the chemistry, and it's a new merchandise, isn't it? I think it's more proactive now to actually raise awareness on spice and what it actually does, and do campaigns, work with all local authorities. I've actually contacted the police as well about working on these campaigns. So I think it's more about awareness. These drugs are always going to be there. It doesn't matter what drug it is. 10 years time there'll be a new designer drug. Before that it was methadone. Whatever the designer drug is, it's about teaching the kids the purpose of why it's there in the first place, and the awareness to actually keep away from it.
Maybe show it to them, because it looks like weed, does it not? It looks, when it's crushed up, it looks like weed. I thought it was a powder.
No, it's synthetic weed. There was actually a really good documentary, which was The Last Days of Legal Highs, which was on iPlayer. I don't know if that's actually still there, but it was actually the same guy that invented methadone that invented spice. Now, his part of the argument is that people should be able to get high without turning to illegal substances, which I kind of get that, but there's no measures in place. There's no at what cost. It's not been tested. It's you'd be better off legalising weed rather than
or even heroin. Even heroin.
Well, out of the mouth of an actual doctor, because obviously I go to homeless appointments down to A&E when they've got DVTs, things like that. And someone said off the record at the county hospital, works with the homeless, that they're better off actually taking heroin than they are taking this lethal concoction of spice. And it is a lethal combination with alcohol.
So where are they getting this spice from? Is it from shops, or is it from street dealers, or where's it coming from?
I think it's coming from a multitude of places. Before the ban come in, there were shops that were going around the town centre selling it at discount prices, so people were buying in bulk.
Right, so in other words, they punted it all out, and now it's out there, it's in the system, and it's addictive, it's highly addictive, is it not?
I think if you want to find out where the spice is coming from, you've got to start looking at where it was coming from when it was legal.
Yeah.
It's be coming from the same place.
So in my opinion, legalised highs are just basically created by people who've got massive student debts, and they've studied chemistry, and they're like, how do I repay my debts? Well, the obvious answer is to make drugs. Ecstasy in Brighton in the 90s was made by people at Sussex University. It was a good drug, but these people get it, they pollute it, and they're killing people.
Another thing with illegal highs as well, at that documentary, there was actually some crystals, which I didn't know about this until I actually watched the documentary. They are called research crystals to do your own research with, and the homeless are actually cooking this up, and they're intravenously using this. What purpose would you make a drug for research that's a crystal base? What else? What else could they do with it? It's all these loopholes, and the way that they word things. Like spice is actually, it's marketed as a fragrance, as an incense, when you know damn well that people are smoking it and using it for recreational uses, the same as these crystals. Yeah. They're intravenously using it. Why would you need to create something like that? I mean, if you want incense, you go and buy Nax shampoo. You don't go and buy spice. They know what these people are doing with it, and it is highly addictive. It's about 20 or 30 times stronger than skunk itself, and as I said, it's a lethal combination with cardiac arrest, with booze, and it causes a lot of psychotic episodes. It's reached crisis point now at the point of our own hospital. They don't actually know how to deal with it and bring people out of this psychosis, because it's a different mix of different chemicals in every single batch. Yeah. So how do you deal with that?
Of course, a pharmacologist will have no way of knowing what those chemicals. It's a bit like the fracking fluids. There's different combinations, different batches. No one knows what it is. So how can you fight a problem if you can't? If you can't quantify and can't qualify what's in there, you can't do it. Right, thanks, Mo. Good to see you, darling. So, this is Kenny Lloyd from outside Bhasvic. We've had a fantastic evening here tonight with the chaps from Prequel. We've hoped we've given you a good film out here. There's some good young people out there, that's the main thing, doing good things. And the main thing to remember is there are 7 billion people on this planet, right? Everyone's got a slightly different point of view, but ultimately, we have to take the point of view that everybody's equal, and they deserve housing, they deserve food, they deserve water, deserve everything. It doesn't cost much. $30 billion a year, they reckon, take the whole world out of poverty. That's what the world spends every 8 days on war. Think about that.